بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So we have reached the 29th greater sin in book Greater Sins. The 29th sin is helping the oppressors. So helping the oppressors is classified as greater sin. It's mentioned in Quran, mentioned in narrations. Um, one of the narrations from Imam Rida alayhi salam says, and helping the oppressors and bending or like leaning, inclining towards them. He mentions this in the greater sins. He says, not, we have other narration from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, not helping the oppressed people is a greater sin. So what he means by this is it also signifies that oppressing people is a greater sin, because not helping the oppressed is a greater sin. And we see that those who stand by and watch the oppression of other people without, the slightest care or concern at all, they're also silent partners in that oppression. And we see this happening all the time, especially now with the case of Philistine and Israel. So people are not doing anything; they don't even speak about it, and even worse, maybe some encourage that, or at least if they don't say anything, it's a silent partner, meaning that you are okay with it and you don't really care. If he can't do that, then the next step is that he should change it with his tongue, meaning he should speak out. Okay, let me start back. It cut me off. We said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if we see an evil, we should try to change it with our hand physically. And if we cannot do that, then we should change it with our tongue, meaning we should speak out against it. We shouldn't be silent. And we should show our contempt for that thing, and not be indifferent or agree to it. The last thing he mentioned, if we cannot change it with our hand or change it with our tongue, then the least we should not, we should hate it in our heart. We shouldn't like it, shouldn't be indifferent towards it. We should disagree with it in our heart. And this is the weakest of those options that we have. So there's no way that we should be accepting of oppression of other people. Imam Qadim alayhi salam says to participate in the activities of the oppressors and to endeavor to achieve their evil objectives and to help them is equal to kufr, or becoming a disbeliever. And to knowingly lean towards them is a greater sin, and greater sin is deserving of punishment of hellfire. So helping the oppressors is kufr, is disbelief. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, on the night of Mi'raj, I saw the following inscription on the doors of hellfire or Jahannam: do not be a helper of the oppressors. So this is a warning for us that we don't want to go to Jahannam. That is written on the door. Then don't be the helpers of those who oppress other people, or the Alameen. We mentioned that it's greater sin according to Quran. We see Surah Hud, ayat 113, and do not incline to those who are unjust, lest the fire should touch you, and you have no guardians beside Allah, then you will not be helped. So Allah says, don't even incline towards them. And we have in Tafsir Minhaj al-Sadiqeen, it says, do not incline. It means that we shouldn't have the slightest inclination towards the oppressors. So we shouldn't treat them honorably. We shouldn't, because this gives it gives the notion to other people that if you respect an oppressor, then it's okay to respect them, and people see this, and then they start respecting them. So we shouldn't respect them or honor them or mix with them or show our affection towards them. And the author says we must not be greedy of their gifts. I mean, we shouldn't praise them in order to get something from them. And we shouldn't praise them or obey their orders. He says, when such are the prohibitions against the oppressors, it's obvious that it cannot be lawful to help them or cooperate with them in oppression. So we shouldn't willfully do this. But sometimes it may be necessary, to preserve our life or our property and these things. And this would be something different because this would be in a state of taqiyya, meaning that if you don't help them, they might kill you or may persecute your family or maybe take the house you have and seize it or something like this. But this doesn't mean that we should willfully go and volunteer our services for oppressive people. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa says, one who prays for the long life of an oppressor is as if he likes the opposition. It's as if he likes the opposition of Allah on the earth. So we also shouldn't wish for the long life of oppressors. He says there's an interesting incident in the book Rawdatul Jannah about the author. He said once the Sayyid and another respected teacher, a Sheikh, planned a ziyarah to Imam Rida alayhi salam in Mashhad. But then they learned that the Shah Abbas Safavi was staying in Mashhad. So they decided to cancel their visit because they didn't want to go and be in the same place with the Shah or meet the Shah or the oppressor was there. They didn't want to be summoned by him. So they didn't go. He said similarly in the biography of Sayyid Bahar al-Ulum, it's mentioned that when the governor of Shustaran province behaved with utmost respect with him, he says, before I could develop some liking for him and come under the denouncement of the Quranic verse, I fled from that place. I ran away from that place, though he went to another city and settled down in Iraq for the rest of his life. So he didn't want to go to the same town that the oppressor was in. He says when we study the biographies of the ulama, we see how strictly they refrained from meeting and mixing with the oppressors, so that there would not be even a remote chance for them to befriend them or help them in their activities. They didn't want to be close with them because they would ask them to do things for them, and then they would be cooperating, helping the oppressors in that case. So something I learned a long time ago, if you see the problem, you try to avoid that problem and make, if you see that the oppressor is in that place and if you go there that he'll summon you, then it's better not to go there at all. So you don't have the opportunity to be invited by that person, or, you can say that you were somewhere else. The other thing about it is if we get if you are there with the oppressor and they do invite you and you just don't go, then this will cause friction between you and them, and also they could take that out on you or something like this. So the ulama would just avoid those places. We have another mention of a book. Let's see. I'm trying to find this one. Okay, 1 second. Okay, it's quoted from one of these books that Tariq Bahir, that Khawa Nizam al-Mulk, the Prime Minister of Malik Shah Seljuk. was very thoughtful of the hereafter, and he thought about the day of judgment a lot. So during the tenure of his ministry, he was a supporter of those who were helpless. He befriended the intellectuals. He was doing his wajibat, and he thought that he should obtain a certain type of certificate from the ulama that said he had good akhlaq. He needed a certificate for good akhlaq. And he wanted to take this and put it inside his coffin when he died. And he hoped that with this paper, he could get salvation. So he drafted up a certificate. He wrote, such and such, and he put his name and said, I have a good akhlaq and these type of things and these traits, and then get ulama to sign it. So he sent it to different ulama and wanted to get their signatures for it. And when it reached Baghdad, it was presented from one of the teachers of the Hausa, Sheikh Abu Ishaq. And Sheikh Abu Ishaq, he wrote in this, he said, I witnessed that Sheikh Nizam al-Mulk is a slightly better oppressor from amongst the other oppressors. And when he saw that remark of that Sheikh, he started crying. And he said, whatever Sheikh Abu Ishaq has written is true. So there's no doubt that helping the Dhalimeen or the oppressors in any type of way is haram, and it's a greater sin. So there's an Islamic law for every kind of oppressor that we have and the ways of helping those oppressors. And the author says it's incumbent on us to learn these so that we don't fall into the trap of helping the oppressors or supporting the oppressors or encouraging them in their behavior. So he mentions some of these types of oppressors. He says the word for oppression in Arabic is dhulm. Dhulm, it also means darkness, and oppression is something dark and not nice, and it's not a good thing. So dhulm means injustice in this sense. And it means to disregard the commands of Allah and also to oppose whatever is compatible with our aql or with our intellect. So two types of oppression, of oppressors. He said the first type of oppression is crossing the limits of religious law is equal to kufr, where Allah says in Surah Luqman, ayah 13, most surely kufr is a grievous iniquity, or polytheism is a grievous iniquity or a greater sin. The next one is denying the divine signs is also oppression. And he says in Surah Baqarah, ayat 254, and the disbelievers, they are the unjust. So we see that those who disbelieve are unjust. And opposing these religious laws would make someone unjust to themselves. It said not accepting them or believing them is a kind of dhulm, a kind of injustice. Apart from this non-acceptance of divine commands or not acting on them, disregarding the limits that Allah has laid down for us, like neglecting a wajib thing like salat or siyam in month of Ramadan, or these type of things, or doing haram actions, all of these constitute a type of injustice. And we see that we wrong ourselves all the time. We mention in Dua Kamil all the time that I have wronged myself. Dalamtu nafsi. I have wronged myself. I mean, I have done dhulm to myself, and we ask Allah to forgive us for committing an injustice against ourselves. We have injustice against ourselves, and we have injustice towards other people as well. So Allah says in Surah Baqarah, ayat 229, whoever exceeds the limits of Allah, these are the unjust. So exceeds the limits. So Allah has set limits for us, and we go past them. For example, He says, don't approach zina, adultery or fornication. This is a limit, but we go towards it. We have exceeded the limit, and then we have become unjust. Another thing Allah mentions in Surah Fatir, ayat 39, therefore whoever disbelieves, his disbelief is against his own self. So there's all types of oppression, and they have insulting other people, abusing other people, degrading other people, or imprisoning a person. Also, we have backbiting and slander, or hurting a person physically. All of these are types of oppression. Another type of oppression is to take someone's property or take something from someone without their permission. We have to have permission, or it's because we don't want to take the right of someone else. If we take the right of someone else, we'll be responsible and have to answer for that right. We cannot use something that doesn't belong to us without their permission. Obviously, if we are staying at someone's house and we know that they will give us permission to use something, for example, they have a TV in the room, and we don't want to use the TV because it's not ours, but we know that them letting us stay in that room entails us using everything in that room, then this wouldn't be wrong for us to do. Or like getting permission to pray in the house. We don't need permission to pray in a Muslim's house because we know that he wouldn't oppose us praying in his house, for example. We talk about taking other people's rights. So the author, he brings the dhulm that was committed by Bani Umayyah, Bani Abbas, when they took the position of he says walayat here, but it's not walayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam that was taken from the when the Khulafa came and took these rights away. The walayat was still there. They never got walayat. No matter if they took the government, what they took was hukumat. Hukumat is the governorship of those positions, but the walayat was always with Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So maybe there's a mistake in the translation here. But the imams were always imams, no matter if someone else claimed it or someone else said they took that position. Imams are divinely appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no one can change that. So what they took, they sat in the seat of the imams. They sat in a seat that wasn't meant for them. As after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I remember a narration where Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam went and confronted the first caliph and told him, get off of the mimbar of my grandfather. And basically, he's sitting in the seat that he should not be in. And this was reserved for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So a good example of them taking the rights of other people is looking at Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, how they had their rights taken. He says oppression belongs to two categories. In one category, the tyrant rulers and kings, they commit dhulm as everyday thing, is normal for them. Second category are the people who may do injustice to someone else once in a while. Maybe they take someone's money, or they lie to someone, or they cheat someone in business, but they don't do it every day. And these are different types of injustice. Someone does that all the time, continuously, which is worse, and then someone does it from time to time. But when we do injustice towards other people, we have haqq nas. We have to answer for those things. So the things between us and Allah, like salat and fasting and hajj and these things, maybe Allah will forgive us for these things. But we hope for that. But the people, the rights of the people, we have taken their rights. We have to give forgiveness for them. Either we give them some of our good deeds, or we take some of their sins if we have no good deeds, and we don't want to be in that situation. So he says, helping an oppressor in any way whatsoever is haram. Any type of aid that we can give to their cause or to promote them forward is haram. For example, to hand over a cane to someone so that he can beat someone else with it. You say, I didn't beat anybody, I just gave it to him. or to help imprison a person, or to help kill a person. All of these are just like the action itself, because without your helping them, then they wouldn't have been able to do that crime. For example, we give the person the gun, and they go take the gun, and then they do the crime. But we gave them the gun, and we knew what they were going to do with it. So this is helping someone do oppression. Or if we support them, it makes them stronger. And with that appearance of having strength, then they commit more oppression. And if we know that something is going to help sponsor oppression, then we shouldn't partake in it. If we are clear about it, it's very clear that, for example, we had recently fatwa from Sayyid Muhammad Taqi Mudarrisi. It was saying that to help, though, what the istiftat or question was, what about these companies that are helping support oppression? And for example, they're supporting Israelis oppressing the Philistine or Palestinian people. What should we do with this? Is basically the question. And the answer was not specific for anything, but the general rule, which will help us. The general rule is, if any organization helps and oppresses other people, for example, we give money to this organization, and this organization oppresses other people, then it's haram for us to do that, because it falls under this category of chapter we're talking about, helping the oppressor. So if we are for certain that a specific company, no matter which company, that they help sponsor people oppressing other people, then we cannot partake in that, and we shouldn't give them our money, and we should boycott those places. But we have to look into it. We have to make sure, because there's a lot of accusations going around for other, this organization, that organization, and anyone can just throw organization out and say they sponsor oppression. We should look into it and be sure about it. And if we don't know, then we can do, if we don't necessarily have to go there, we can do ihtiyat, basically, or be cautious and refrain from it. So he says, Sheikh Ansari writes in his Maqasid that the prohibiting of cooperation with the oppressors is confirmed by all four proofs that we have to make Islamic laws. So when we look at our beliefs and Islamic laws and other things, they're usually supported by four principles. First, we have Quran, then we have Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the A'imma alayhi salam. Then we have Aql. Aql is our reasoning. And then we have Ijma'. That's consensus of the earlier scholars, not the scholars of today, but the scholars that were close to, that were in the time of Ghaibatul Sugra, the lesser occultation of Imam Mahdi, Ajallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. So it was in the earlier period. When we look at them and they all agree on something, we have a law can be formed from that. Even if we don't have narration, which is interesting, because sometimes we see that there's a principle or a law, but we don't have a narration about it, and we don't have Quranic verse about it, but we see that all of those ulama had a fatwa about that thing. And this we can take this as a principle for ijma, because we had a lot of our books that were destroyed in the past. So perhaps the books that we had with those narrations supporting that fatwa, they were destroyed. But these earlier ulama, they had those proofs, but we don't have them now. So their consensus shows us that they did have a proof at one time. So all of these four things, he says that cooperating with oppressors is the prohibition for it is supported by all four. So it's very strong. He says the Quranic verse that we mentioned, do not incline toward those who are unjust. He said this is sufficient proof to prove that it is, haram to do. He said even the slightest inclination towards the unjust is haram. then how can helping them be be permitted? If we cannot incline and even like have emotion towards them to incline towards them, helping them is more than that. So this means that anything more than that, anything more than inclination is haram. The same we see in the principle of saying we shouldn't say uff to our parents. It's haram to say, even uff. And uff was the smallest thing that we could find that was found and mentioned in the ayat. So if the smallest thing is mentioned that is haram to say even uff, then anything more than that is definitely haram. So that's the same principle that was used in this ayat, meaning that if inclination towards them is haram, then anything else is also more than that is also haram. Another ayah from Quran, Surah Ma'adah, ayah 2, and don't help one another in sin and oppression. So this is very clear. Allah says, don't help other people in these things. And be careful of your duty to Allah. Surely Allah is severe in requiting evil. So we have a lot of narrations in this regard. Those some ayat from Quran. We inshallah we'll just mention one of them, and then the next week when we have this session we'll go to more of them. So Sheikh Ansari wrote he had recorded this narration from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, if one knowingly goes to help an oppressor, then he has apostatized from Islam, meaning he has become a murtad. He has left the religion of Islam and it is equal to kufr. So this is very strong, wording for this. That if a person knowingly goes to help that oppressor, so there are certain cases that we'll mention later where people in the times of the Imams did work in oppressive governments, and the reasons why they worked there, and the reasons why it was permissible for them to work there. Some people asked the Imam to go work in these type of places, and he told them no. And some people he told them to go. The same thing with some people wanted to go debate other people. The Imam told them, no, don't debate. Other person like Hisham, he told him, yes, you go debate. So the Imam, there's some things regarding that. We'll talk about it in the next session, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Inshallah 5 minutes